In this episode of Highly Sensitive Money, I interview Kellita Maloof, known as the Showgirl Shaman, about the unique challenges and insights of highly sensitive people in handling their finances. Kellita shares her journey as a performing and teaching artist who helps highly sensitive women embrace their sensitivity through conscious burlesque and dance. She discusses her personal experiences with money, growing up in varied financial environments, and how she has integrated her sensitivity into her entrepreneurial journey. She explores topics such as the struggle with undercharging, the need for financial stability, and the importance of staying embodied while navigating financial decisions. Listen in to hear about how to not have a disembodied boob. Welcome to Highly Sensitive Money. My name is Diana Yañez, and I'm excited to have Kellita Maloof here, the Showgirl Shaman, for an interview on highly sensitive people and how they do money. Hi, Kellita. Great to see you.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Kellita and I actually had an interview in Instagram maybe a year or two
hmm
ago. So it's nice to get to touch on the subject again a couple of years
Yeah.
later. And Kellita, could you share a little bit about what your work is as the
hmm
Showgirl Shaman?
Yes, I am a performing and teaching artist, and I specifically, when I'm teaching, I'm facilitating either the creation of a conscious burlesque solo or a troupe dance experience. And I usually work with highly sensitive, women identified folks who hold a lot of space for other people and are looking for a safe place to really shine themselves and
Okay.
really let a place where it's super supportive to shine and feel the safety of having all of your senses alive in all of your body.
And did you start off aiming to serve highly sensitive people, or
Hmm.
did that come
I,
about
I aimed off.
naturally?
I aimed originally because on the when people work for themselves. I wonder, did we talk about this 2 years ago? The artist entrepreneur. Oh, yeah.
No,
Okay.
I
So
don't think
anyone who
so.
works for themselves in any way, it falls somewhere on this spectrum where on one side it's the artist and on the other side it's the entrepreneur. And then there's all different gradations between. So the entrepreneur in this scenario looks at the world as a marketplace and looks where is a need. I will fulfill this need that I have found. The artist, if you're on the artist side of the entrepreneur artist scale, you have a thing that you burn with that you must share. And then you look, well, how on earth am I gonna share this? Who wants it? And how can I make this something that can be my work in addition to my love? So I fall way on the artist side. So I first was just trying to stay alive as a highly sensitive person myself. And I found what anything that I do, that I share in my work, has healed and helped me first. So it's basically been an ongoing exploration of how can I literally live on this earth in this sensitive body with this sensitive psyche and do some justice to the soul that I am through this body in this lifetime and still stay here on this wild as fuck earth. I hope it's okay that I swear. So all the things, like I found burlesque and I found cabaret dancing, and it super helped me. And then I realized, oh my gosh, it doesn't just help me, it is a joy and a healing path that I can share with others. So it's really come from me responding to what do I need to stay alive and feel joy, and then how I can share that with others. So I come way from the artist side, way from the personal experience rather than, yeah, I'm really strongly on that side.
Yeah, okay. And when did you start to identify that you were highly sensitive? Like what led you to that term?
Yeah, the term I remember shortly after I moved to San Francisco in the mid 90s, I discovered that, the book by Eileen Aaron, what is it called? The Highly Sensitive Person, I think. And I felt
believe
resonance
so.
there. And I mean, I was aware of my experience before then. I just slowly over the decades, I've learned to put more words and understanding to the raw experience that I've been aware of since I was, very, very young. That book helped me, but what helped me miles more is discovering the work of someone else, Annie Axford, who I actually hope that you will be interviewing at some point on this podcast, because she has changed my life with how she articulates high sensitivity and high sensory sensitivity. Just, I have no words for what her words have done for me. So it really was through the work of Annie Axford that she put words. I sometimes have this experience, and I'm so grateful for it, that I will put words to something that someone has never been able to, and it's such a gift. She has done that for me time and again, time and again. Yeah. So
Yeah, I did reach out to her, and I'm excited to see if she'll be on, and I'm excited to learn more about her work. So thanks for
so
sharing
much.
it.
Yeah. So I've been talking about and articulating, someone who really helped me, and I want to lift him up. Another one of my mentors besides Annie is Tad Hargrave of Marketing for Hippies. He helped me discover, not just to discover, but to articulate my own point of view. And that happened. So I started to get really good about being able to admit and share publicly what I actually think about what I'm doing. Like, I've been doing it a long time, much longer, but that was, I would say 2017, 18 is when I really started to be able to talk about in public with clarity and vulnerability, and my view of high sensitivity and drip drip trauma and boom boom trauma and all of this. Yeah, that Tad was a big help with that.
Yeah, wow. When I first heard the term, I didn't see how it applied to me. It was actually someone that asked. And
Okay.
then once the third person asked if I was highly sensitive, because for me, I think I carried a lot of shame about my sensitivity. If anything, I wanted to build a thicker skin. So there was a lot of self
Mm.
rejection around the term. I also was like tired of having
Yeah.
labels. And in the past couple of years, similar to just like being an
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneur and seeing who I serve
Mm-hmm.
best, I slowly realized that the way I teach best aligns with highly sensitive people.
Isn't
And that helped me own it for myself.
I love that. And has that reframed some of the shame that you were experiencing from that title and identification?
Definitely. It definitely has reframed it. I've also come to see the positives of it. Whereas before, I felt so
Yeah.
overwhelmed by my rich inner world and all the connections that I saw. It's like slowly I've just learned more about what do I need to be in my comfort, to be in my range of tolerance. I've also learned about this term called high sensation seeking,
Yeah.
which is a subset. Are you familiar
Yeah,
with that?
I'm pretty sure I'm high sensation seeking, highly sensory sensitive too.
Yeah, yeah, I would imagine as a burlesque performer, that does sound like you're seeking some high sensation.
And, well, I have an add-on, but I want to let you stay with your flow.
No, please,
Okay,
please,
okay.
please
Well,
go.
actually, it's just funny. I have right next to me. So if someone is seeing us, do you see this line in the orange part?
Mm-hmm. Never ever show a disembodied
Yep, never
boob.
ever show a disembodied boob. So while there is and can be much high sensation in burlesque, a major element of my point of view is the point is to be embodied, not just to let adrenaline take over and do
Mm.
whatever you think in the moment is going to please your audience. Absolutely not. It's to stay even more with yourself. And if something doesn't feel good, even a choice you made before, like let's say you're your plan is at the second trumpet solo to remove your bra. If you don't track that you're fully in your body and can fully consent to removing your bra in that moment, if you're dissociated and doing it for someone else, stop it. So, yeah. So for me, it's a training ground for embodiment, because as highly sensitives, we so often, I mean, we start out in the ether. We start out so far from our bodies. We start out feeling the whole world and all the animals
Right.
and the children, and it's this coming here, wait a minute, but where am I? Yes, I can be connected to everything, but who's living in this sweet body? Who's making choices about what this body touches and who sees this body and how? So it's very much a coming down and in, not a coming up and out, but coming down and in to incarnate.
Yeah, and it's actually bringing tears to my eyes. It's reminding me of when I was deciding whether to become an entrepreneur or not. I felt this really strong calling and urge to help more people, to like help ease suffering around money. That's really one of the ways that I see my work.
Yeah.
And I remember telling a friend that it was just like, it was a skill I had, a gift I had. And I was saying it in such a way where he responded, "Why are you not giving yourself significance?" Like I, Deanna, was not in the conversation at all. It was more of like, because I had the skill set, you know, I felt like I should do it. And sometimes as a highly sensitive person, because I can feel other people's emotions, not 100%, I'm not psychic,
Just like that.
but I'm so highly attuned. I sometimes forget to even check in with myself.
Absolutely. Guilty here too.
Right. I mean, it's part of the gift, and it's like a balance to learn how to carry it.
And have
well.
you come more understanding that and knowing that? Have you come to a place now where you consider yourself more in your offerings and how you show up in addition to the people that are lucky enough to be served by you?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and definitely. So I'm very much a person that learns by trial and error, and it was burnout that helped me see. Knowing the conditions that led to burnout, let me know the conditions that led to thriving and to being rested and to, I was sharing with Kellita, like literally right before this, I took a 10-minute nap. It's not very long, but it was enough for me to just come in. And I mean, the to-do list is always there. And 10-15 minutes for me to just rest and show up.
Yeah.
And like all of me show up. It's so important. And it's something that often we forget. Like we live in a society, again, that's like very production focused, very productivity focused.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yes. Rest.
And it's not serving anyone.
No, it's not. Yeah. I was just, there's a queen on Instagram who came out with a book not long ago. What's her name? It's all rest. I think nap. The Nap Ministry.
Oh,
the Nap Ministry. Yes. I was just reading some of that beautiful wisdom today. Yeah. So yes. All for it. All for it.
Yeah, and I'll link her, and I'll link some of the other people.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, Tad and Annie and
show notes.
Nap Ministry. Absolutely. Love it.
Now, bringing the focus back to what this podcast is about, highly sensitive money. I would love to hear what the background of the financial background of your childhood was, and how you continue to see it affect you today, if at all.
Yeah, I love these questions. Yeah. So I grew up primarily in a village in Northern California called Mendocino, California. And I mean village. Like when we moved there in 1972, there was 1,000 people. And when we left 10 years later, there was 2,000. Yeah, that tiny. And then my family went to San Diego, which was really, really different culturally, much bigger and just super, super different. So I'm going to use these two places as how they, even though most of my childhood was in Mendocino, there was the tail end in San Diego, and then my family stayed there for a really long time. So in Mendocino, my parents they stood out as I'm going to give a few different titles, more kind of normal and middle class, and by the standards of Mendocino in the 70s, conservative. Very different from what conservative is today. Mendocino in the 70s, conservative, just means that they weren't on drugs all day long. And they had their children wear clothes and go to school in clothes rather than naked. And I'm not kidding. We could talk for a long time about Mendocino, but in any case, Mendocino was really a cutting edge. You know, after the Love-ins and the Be-ins in San Francisco died down, after the Summer of Love, it started shifting very much and quite quickly. The people who didn't want to stop the Love-ins and the Be-ins went off to live in the woods. So in Mendocino, we didn't live in the woods without electricity and what have you. So what we had money-wise seemed much more, I don't know, we never felt wealthy, but we had plumbing. And I always had meals. And I can't say that for, I grew up with lots of people who basically had no parenting at all. So I can't like separate out the money from the whole social fabric. That's why I'm sharing it all together, because it came as a unit. And then I'll just contrast that with in San Diego, my parents are from the very beginning, from when they moved there in the 80s, very liberal and still middle class, but feel much more not like San Diego has such a feeling of wealth, and it's an external kind of wealth. So even though my family probably stayed in a very similar, somewhere in the middle class, the feeling was so different compared to who we were around that, and also like I had to leave Mendocino before my family because it was killing me. I've just given little examples, but it was really lethal for children. Really lethal for children.
Wow.
This, if this stuff, if anyone ever writes the books or it gets made into TV movies, no one will believe that it's true. That hard on children. Yeah, I mean, I feel it in my body even talking about it. Really hard. But so I needed to leave before my family could leave. They couldn't leave on a dime. My dad had to get a new job, so it took a couple of years to figure that out. But I had to go away first, so I went to a private school, but I was the scholarship kid. A whole bunch of people contributed money so that I could attend the school. So even though I was still quite somewhere in the middle of middle class, I was way the poor kid. And I was not just the poor kid. I didn't shave my legs. I was kind of punk. I studied a lot. Like, I was really weird. But it combined with economics. For them, I was poor and weird. Even though in another context, I wasn't poor. So really, just like to this day, I don't even understand, where am I in the financial landscape? I still don't know. I know this is weird to say, but I don't. Yeah.
Well, but I wonder how much it matters.
I don't know, but we're talking about it. So we're looking for.
Yeah. Well, we're looking at, because one of your questions was like, where do I sit in the financial landscape of like much to little? And it really, and that was part of my story. I moved from a small town where my family was actually amongst the wealthiest to find out that we were really poor.
Similar.
Like, why are not all of
similar
the
story? Yeah.
And it wasn't. I mean, wealth is so much about context.
So much about context. Yeah.
And for listeners who are not aware of your current geography, you live in San Francisco.
I do. I'm an artist who's lived in San Francisco for 29 years. So, I mean, I'm technically on the scale whenever I look at like, what does the average San Franciscan earn and what, I'm way in the poor category. But is my life rich with experience? Absolutely. It's like most often I get to participate in most things that are meaningful to me. Educationally, artistically, I'm extremely rich. But as far as dollars and bank account and tax returns, I'm solidly in poverty. So it makes no sense.
Right. And compare to what people are like in San
Yeah,
Francisco versus where they are in
yeah.
other parts of the country. It's such a, and I think it's highly sensitive people. I wonder, I'm really curious to see how many of us actually even at some point just let go of those external standards, because keeping up with other people, at some point you're like, hey, that's not the game I want to
It's never
play.
been the game I wanted to play. And I've reached 56 with precious little material things. My money has gone to experience, like wholeheartedly. That's been a choice from the beginning, is to live rich in experience.
And so it continues the way that you grew up as a child, going from solidly middle class and in a tiny little town that was unsafe for children to then moving to a private school where you experienced being the poor kid, maybe sounds like ostracized a little bit because you were the poor
I had
weird
one
kid.
friend for those 2 years.
Wow.
And I, prior to that and after that, have been rich with friends. But in those 2 years, I had one. And she's still my friend to this day. I just saw her, so it's very precious. Yeah.
Oh,
Shout out to
that's
Maggie.
great.
Love you, Maggie.
And in San Diego, what was the financial background of your childhood
Well,
there? You
I
said it
got there in my
was.
last year of high school, so there wasn't too much there. But I stayed and went to college at UCSD, and I think the only thing I knew, I lived at home much of college because I'd been away in high school. It was weird. It was weird to not live with my family during high school. So I think I needed to do some more development and be with them a little more. So I did. I don't know. I think my focus was so not on finances then. Again, it was just trying to like stay alive relationally. I was
Yeah.
so not ready for all that comes with college, and that time was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And as a highly sensitive person and as an entrepreneur, where where do you think like you started to develop more of a focus on money, if at
Yeah.
all?
I think it was, so I started working for myself as a part-time thing. In the first 10 years it was part-time. So I kept a regular part-time job. And I can't say I worked part-time on my self-employed work. I worked 100% on my self-employed work because who counts hours when you're doing that? But I did have, 20 to 24 hours of regular work, more or less, for the first 10 years. And so I would actually say for almost the first 10, it was 8 years in to working for myself that I attended a local, something called the Renaissance Entrepreneurship Center, where the idea was, to create a business plan. It was a little too much of a normal institution for me. Like I had trouble. I didn't finish the business plan, even by the end of the time with them, because I wasn't able to. But my thinking about the whole process and system of the thinking about money and the thinking about and something that could be more predictable or make more sense, that started being awakened about 8 years in.
So was it like being self-employed 100%, doing what you wanted 100%, that felt more attainable, or it felt like there was a way that you could figure it out financially? Was it that kind of like hopeful thinking, or was it just like, wait, I'm a business owner? A little bit of both.
You mean when I took the class, or?
Yes, when you took the class, because you said your thinking about money started to be awakened, and
Yeah,
I'm
wondering how.
curious.
I think what got awakened then was a little bit more, it is related to money, but it was a little bit more of business model. I didn't even know what that term was until then. Just the thing of having, I think, coming out of a little bit more of magical thinking of, we'll just figure this out. I'll do what I'm called to do, not having anything on paper, like a financial plan for the year. This course at Renaissance, it helped me start to think a little more in that way, even though I couldn't nail it down as much as the program was trying to help me nail it down. At least I had more of a sense of planning or predicting could be more helpful. That's what started to happen. This question of like what happened there with my relationship with money.
Like what even led you? What even inspired you to just sign up for this class?
I can't remember. It was a while ago. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I wish I could recall what or who. It was probably somebody who inspired me to take that course. And from that point on, I did have different coaches and such, and I mentioned then Tad Hargrave, who I discovered in maybe 2016 or so, 15 or 16, and worked, I would say most of it's not money that he focuses on, but he focuses on really ethical, authentic, slow marketing, which very much impacts money. They're connected, and yeah.
Yeah, and I've heard of him too, of marketing for hippies, and it being a really good fit for highly sensitive people, because we want to do marketing in a way that often encompasses everything. There's another person that I love, Daniel Gardner.
She
writes quiet marketing.
Yes, I know her. Mm-hmm. Yes, she's wonderful too.
Yeah. So there's so many resources, and it's like well, at first the term HSP felt like a negative label. Now I see that it's actually a resource that lets me know. It's kind of like if you're allergic to something, it lets you know, like, this is things that are safe for people who are allergic to it. It's just, it's much more helpful. Yeah. And
I one piece that has been hard for me in a challenge with charging money at all is that I grew up in a house of service. So my family was always welcoming people in to share meals, stay with us, offering lots to other people. And there was not it was for free. And there is something in me that has felt like I should be giving this all away. And that actually kept me really in tricky financial straits for a long time. And I understand now why, we're living in late stage capitalism. It is important for people to charge for their services. I mean, just on that basic level, that's how we're doing it now. The urge to, one of the ways that high sensitivity, if it's not fully integrated, often couples up with codependency and people pleasing. And I've really experienced the difficult sides of those in slashing prices too much in the past, undercharging grossly. I have experienced those things. And then even now, my prices are higher, and part of me, I have like a tug of war inside that some part of me is sure, wait, it needs to be higher. And part of me is sure, no, it needs to be lower. And there's just all these kinds of arguments happening inside. And it's quite a lot to work for yourself, especially when your own face and your own words are what carries your service into the world. It's a lot. Add high sensitivity to that, and it's a lot.
I was recently talking with someone who, like, the term brand, when you think about where it comes from cattle being branded.
Oh my God, that's disgusting.
It's like,
ooh.
It's really commodifying ourselves.
I hate that.
And you mentioned, like,
I want to go listen to that episode.
So what's your brand?
Yeah.
You're like,
I don't like talking about brand. I know that we are essentially, especially when it's a solopreneur. Yeah, it is our voice. It is literally our voice. But I actually don't talk about that term, brand and branding. It's just not something I find myself speaking about much. It's less attractive now that you've mentioned that. But it was not ever one that I like talking about my point of view. That feels right and true. My take on things, my experience. I'm really happy to talk about all of those things. But brand just has a bit of a plastic sound to me.
And maybe, but here's a little bit more of maybe why the word brand felt the way that it did. And also I remember one of the other people that I've had on season 2 of Highly Sensitive Money, they're a therapist, and they were saying that if they lived in a community where all of their needs would be taken care of, like food, shelter, rest, all of those things, then yes, they would be happy to offer their services for
Yeah.
free, so that everybody had access to therapy in exchange for those
Mm-hmm.
needs being
Mm-hmm.
taken care of. And that's not how we are organizing society today. So we get to work with how do we do money?
Mm-hmm.
How do we, especially as
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurs, and I hear that tug and pull. One of the things that I've done to, because specifically for myself as someone who works with money, I work with money, right? Like the relationship with money, the thoughts
Yeah.
about money. I have a sliding scale. And depending on your
Mm-hmm.
income, on the amount of assets that I manage, I charge people differently. And some people are turned off by it, which is great
They're not your
because
people.
they're not the
Yeah.
people I want to
Yeah.
work with. Yeah. It ends up becoming like an immediate
That's
filter.
beautiful.
And yeah, it's been really supportive for me, and feeling and having my needs met, and also in feeling like I can access and serve the people I want to serve. And sometimes I know some people will do a certain percentage will be pro bono, a certain percentage won't. And it's opening up that
Mm-hmm.
conversation more. But just like you don't want to have a disembodied boob, you don't want to have a disembodied money
Absolutely.
conversation.
Yeah. I think that because what people are more aware of, I think, is big companies, that we see how big companies do like a sale or specials or things. When it comes to a really tiny business, which is like one person and their own creation and their own time, I have a lot of people ask me, oh, do you have a scholarship? A scholarship implies that people have put money towards something and it's waiting to give. A scholarship for most solopreneurs means they just get less money. Unless there is actually a fund. Like for a bigger organization, a scholarship fund would be funded by something, not the creator. So I just think that if you don't work for yourself, many people who don't work for themselves have no idea of the complexities. It's not like I'm a little target. I'm just a person. It's not like I'm a little big company. Big companies are really different.
Yeah. Yeah, they're
Really
really
different.
different. So you mentioned that at the beginning of being an entrepreneur, you had a stable income as well as working for yourself. And the working for yourself hours were could be 100%. I'm going into my 3rd year as an entrepreneur. And also I have multiple different ways
Mm-hmm.
of earning income, and some of them are more stable than
Yeah.
others. And you mentioned magical thinking, and then a lot of us will have like a negative response to the word magical thinking, but there's also like, it's a bit of a requirement to be a creative. It's a bit
Yeah,
of a requirement to be an
I think so.
entrepreneur.
Yeah. Thank you for reframing that.
Hmm.
It's a beautiful skill, which I don't always talk about, because it's also important for that magical, really high on imagination thinking to not be exposed to a lot of. If I expose how deep this magical thinking lives in me, or this creative imaginative thinking,
Hmm.
how much it influences me, if I just let anyone know about it and felt their skepticism, it actually would affect, I would feel that, and it would affect my experience too much. So I'm just instinctively careful about how much I talk about it or to whom. Yeah.
That's a beautiful skill. I remember hearing years ago, don't tell your goals to
Yeah,
trolls,
it's like that. It
you
is like
know?
that. Yes.
Yeah.
Because we'll feel that.
And I
We'll
like your,
feel that. Ooh, and it might
yes.
scare the magic. Yeah.
Yeah. It's I'm thinking a lot about it in metaphors, but it's kind of like if you have a seed, you plant it. You don't dig it back up. You plant it. And I've learned too that some things need to incubate
Yes.
longer than
Yes.
others. And when it comes to money, I mean, many of my clients, many people I talk to, they think there's like a right way to do it. And I love this quote by Morgan Housel. He's a blogger and a writer, and he says that money looks like math because it has numbers, but it's much more like psychology,
Yes.
which I take to mean that
Yes.
there's really no right answer. There's
Yeah.
no right way of doing it. Just like there's no right way to live or right way to do anything, right? We are all an individual expression.
Absolutely. I love that quote and how you're holding it and speaking of it. Absolutely.
So tell me about something, I mean, if you can think of something like where the magical thinking, once it was out in the world, that it was able to kind of land with legs, if that makes sense. Like here you have this idea
Yeah.
and then it lands in the world and because I imagine you've had them and how long have you been an entrepreneur now? 30
No,
years?
24. 24 and
24 years as
14
an
of them
entrepreneur.
100%. The first 10 were had some part-time other work. Yeah. Yeah, I mean what I think of the most when I think of this, what was just imagination or magic in my consciousness and seeing it come to life, I much more immediately think of the creations, like the artistic creations that I've created with people, less than the amount of dollars in the bank. While they're both beautiful, I fall on the artist side in this as well. Like just for example, the creating of a 30 to 50 person group of people participating in a parade, all coming from a seed in my consciousness of, oh my gosh, of a song, a color, movements, invitations of professional musicians, invitations of dancers to join the company, the calling in of the photographer and the videographer, and a place to practice, and an after party place, and the costume designer, and all of this coming together, and literally people coming from different cities and states or countries to gather and make this a living creation. That is straight up magic. It's just not even shy, not even an inch shy. And it all comes from this little spark of a tickle in my belly. I can't even believe it. Yeah. And it's happening now.
Yeah.
It literally, I am in the planning process for doing what I just said. And it's going to happen at the end of May in San Francisco. It is a living thing,
Oh,
even
that's
before
beautiful.
any other human says yes to it. And I trust that it's a living thing before anyone says yes to it. And I move forward with that.
And with your clients who come to you, you're highly sensitive
Yeah.
women who are looking to be more embodied. I would like for anyone who is resonating with that, what are some practices that you could share with them in addition
Yeah.
to following your
Yeah.
work?
Of how to be with their own highly sensitive body. Yeah.
Yes, or how to, just like what you said, because you mentioned at the beginning that going to this entrepreneur workshop opened up the idea that you wanted to have more stability in your income or more predictability. Here, this might be opening up the idea that some people might want to be more embodied.
Right. Yeah.
So where,
Oh, we'll just
yeah.
start. We'll just start with the shimmy. You can even just start with your sweet palm. So this, I'm just twinkling my fingers, or I'm even doing a little bigger, which is full, like jazz hand. This is a shimmy. Oh, even though it's just in my hands, I don't know if you feel anything yet. Diana, do you feel anything yet?
Yeah, you feel this warmth and this movement, this checking in with your fingertips.
Yes.
And a question that's coming up is that sometimes we've talked about it a little bit earlier, but like being disembodied can be a way of protection, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what are some of the safe parameters that people can start to learn within themselves?
Yes. A big one, while the shimmy on its own, and there's all parts of our bodies, like we can shimmy, let's first, I'm going to answer that question, shimmy your bottom. Yeah, you can tell without me saying that I'm shimmying my bottom. And so wherever you are listening to this, if you to just shimmy your bottom, literally bring a vibration into your bottom. Oh, this movement, wherever you send it, whether it's your bottom or your hands or your shoulders, I'm sending it up to my shoulders. This is movement medicine, straight up movement medicine. And it's, I don't know if you know what is, I'm going to send it back to my bottom. Herbs. There are herbs that are called adaptogens. I'm not an herbalist, but I'm going to pause my shimmy just so I can think straight. It's scrambling my words. Adaptogen.
For those of you listening to the podcast, like hop onto the YouTube and you can watch both of us shimmy our shoulders and our bottoms.
Yes,
and our
yes.
hands.
So adaptogenic herbs, what's beautiful about them, Schisandra berry is one, ashwagandha is another, is that they give you the thing that you most need. They might wake you up more or make you more calm. They actually can tell, oh, she needs a little more of this. The shimmy is an adaptogenic movement. If we're feeling high anxiety and really a little like too strung up or strung out, she calms us down. If we're feeling a little too sedentary and hard to move and not sparked with our natural joy, she raises our joy. There's a whole bunch that comes with the shimmy. I'm going to tell you, and this isn't going to be in the notes. You have to listen to this. And listen, you could put it in the notes if you want. It's not something you see on the website, but if you type it, or maybe it is, I don't even remember, but showgirlawakening.com/movement. It's either movement or movements. And I actually teach 6 foundational movements and talk about the medicine so you can practice them at home for free. My favorite way, though, is to not move alone. It's to move with other people and witness each other. And
because
we mirror each other in a safe way. That's that. The biggest medicine is there, but a beautiful way to start is on your own. And one way to start is by using those videos. Yeah.
That's beautiful. The parallel when it comes to money work is that whenever I invite people to imagine a world with their money where looking at their spreadsheets, looking at their bank statements, whatever it is somewhere between getting a deep clean at the dentist, you know, where it's uncomfortable, and getting a deep tissue massage. Also a bit uncomfortable, but more pleasurable. Like it ends up becoming a way of, it's like a self-care routine of being in relationship with those numbers. And I invite people to set a timer, 5 minutes.
I love that.
Learn what is your range of tolerance. Yeah. Learn what is your range of tolerance. And as someone who's experienced like deep trauma in my body, I know that learning to dance, I learned to Lindy Hop and blues dance and salsa dance. All of those things 10 years ago set me up to then be able to do more, like to do the compassionate inquiry work that I do now, because all of this these feelings, these emotions, these sensations that I had in my body that were overwhelming, they had to find safe outlets. So I love this movement of like, what did you say they were called again?
Adaptogenic. And I've never heard anyone talk about adaptogenic movements. But I'm just making that parallel from what they do with herbs. Yeah. What it means with herbs. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's for me, when it comes, again, the parallel with money is just learning your range of tolerance and knowing that some days 2 minutes is what you're going to do. And other days you're going to do a deep dive for 2 hours and really start to plan it out. And just being in practice with it.
I love that. I want to do that. I've been looking more at the numbers and with compassion and curiosity. So I love that practice of some minutes.
I've worked with clients who've done like artists and people who've sold businesses who have made miracles happen in terms of income that's come in. And yet because of age or because of family obligations or of different things, we somehow find that it's not enough, which is crazy because they see a number comes in that is beyond their wildest dreams. And then when I'm doing the financial planning with them, when we're doing the projection, we're like, this is how much you need to continue creating. And it can be really hard to like deliver the message. And I always have to remind them that underneath, they've already made a miracle happen.
I love that. I love that. I like to hear of the care with which I can feel this care of practical meets magical with which you hold them.
So it's going into these conversations with that magical thinking, looking for how it has roots, where it can grow in a way, because sometimes I know for myself, magical thinking will be like, I'm just going to sit at home and think about what I want and will do nothing about it. And like, I'm literally closing my eyes with it. Right. And then sometimes it means going out and taking action, and often action. And that action could be, let me just look at last month's statements. That's action calling in what you want.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, one of my favorite questions is about money mentors. I had the experience in college, right after graduating from college. I met a lady at church who at the time I didn't have an income, and I was living off of unemployment, and I was trying to figure out my budget. And she sat with me and looked at it with me and like told me how much of my payment towards student loans was going towards interest versus principal. And like really just like, she's like, if you make an extra $10 payment, more of that will go towards principal. She taught me these really small things about finances. And she was very caring about it. And with time, I learned a lot from her. She really is, in my mind, a money mentor. Is there anyone in your life that has served that role for you? And it could be someone you know personally, or someone a book that you've read.
Not yet, but I'm open to it. Yeah.
Money mentors are often people who show us a relationship to money that we want to emulate, that we want to grow into.
I like that. I no one comes to mind yet. Yeah. I've just more seen examples that I didn't want. That's what. Examples of how to relate to money.
Well, and that. Yeah. And how have you learned from those, or what have you learned from those that you'd like to share?
I think there was from my dad. I don't know if this qualifies to answer exactly that question, but he just basically said, don't go into debt of any kind. And that was about it. Don't go into debt, but nothing about how to tend or care for or relate to money. Just the focus was on like what not to do. But how to be in relationship with it wasn't there. Yeah.
And it's a strange world, this late stage capitalism.
Yeah.
Like
even like right now, I took out a small business loan during the pandemic. And I have not yet been able to find out definitively, even from like small business association related entities, of how much of my monthly payments are going to principal versus interest. I can't even find a person to answer that question.
Wow.
So that's really frustrating. Yeah. And I'll keep trying, but it's just one of those things where you call this number or this email, you can't get through, and then they say, we don't know, and blah, blah, blah. So I still don't know. And the people who help me know how to get the loan, they don't know either. And my accountant, she doesn't know either. Nobody knows.
Yeah. I remember when those came out, we were helping clients get qualify for them. And they were all just kind of like spur of the moment emergency funding that the government was created. So I can imagine that figuring out how this all plays out in the long term is still very much like, it can be very much like a black box.
I don't want to not touch the principal for 20 years. I want to, but I just simply don't know.
And how do you stay with your body? How do you stay embodied with that in those conversations?
I'm testing right now. Yeah, I feel a combination of anger and frustration, and it's not sending me outside. I actually quite feel myself in my feet, in my legs, in my belly. I feel my own weight around it. So it's not sending me into dissociation, it's pissing me off.
It's activating you in a positive way and
Yeah,
to stay
yeah.
engaged with it.
Well, yeah, sometimes I stay engaged with it and sometimes I just have to pause and,
Mm.
but yeah.
Yeah. Well, is there anything that you want to add as we're wrapping up the recording?
Oh, I just want to say thank you. I do a lot of podcasts, but this has been really a deep dive into money. One thing about money is it's rarely talked about and publicly. So I didn't even know how
Oh,
personal
yeah.
this would be. So thank you for creating the safe space and for initiating these conversations.
Yeah. I heard recently there was a study that people, that specifically women, would prefer to talk about death, to talk about their own death, than to talk about money. So, still very taboo subject. It can be very anxiety producing, and yet it doesn't have to be. There are tools, there's ranges of tolerance, there's something for us to learn in it, I imagine, I feel. And yeah, like I shared earlier, my calling was to help ease suffering around money. So I'm really honored and grateful that you showed up and that you were willing to answer these very, very, very intimate questions. And it's I mean, you're a cabaret dancer. You show yourself like you show very intimate parts of yourself very publicly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So once again, thank you for
Thank
your
you. Thank
time
you.
and I'll see you soon. Thank you so much for listening to this episode in the second season of Highly Sensitive Money, where we talk about money, social justice, and how to do this well as a highly sensitive person. To learn more about my services, check out my website, allthecolors.net, where you can also find a really fun link to a quiz on money archetypes, because understanding our own patterns with money makes it much easier to make changes and get to where we want to go. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate and review wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening.